My name is Kelly Greenlee. I am the Community Outreach Librarian at Prince Memorial Library. We at the library serve the communities of Cumberland and North Yarmouth, and we're so pleased to welcome so many of you into our virtual Zoom room this evening. Before we begin, I do have some housekeeping items. This is the second in a three-part series. The first part of the series was recorded, and that recording lives on the Prince Memorial Library website at princememorial.org. So if you haven't seen it, you may find that to be interesting and you might want to check it out. Part 3 will be held on Sunday, May 7th, in person in Cumberland, Maine, and recorded for those who cannot join us in person. If you plan to attend in person, we do ask that you register for that event. You can find that registration information also on the Prince Memorial Library website that's princememorial.org. And for those of you who cannot attend in person, we will post the recording of that also on the library website sometime during the week of May 8th. Tonight, we are offering perspective from several individuals whom we will introduce to you shortly. We have asked the panelists with us tonight to speak for 5 to 15 minutes. And one thing that we try to be very mindful of is that we have a very short window of time together this evening. Each of the panelists could probably speak to you for hours about their various topics, but alas, our time is limited. And it's our hope that we might give you a glimpse or cast a light or perhaps inspire you to seek further information. We hope that this is the start of a conversation that will continue. To ask a question this evening of our presenters, we ask that you just simply click on the Q&A icon that's at the bottom of your screen. You may need to jiggle the mouse over the bottom of your screen to see it. We do encourage you to ask questions. Please know that we will address the questions at the end of tonight's agenda. And we do have a large number of people in attendance this evening, and we will do our very best to see that as many questions get answered as possible. As a library, we try to cast a wide net for the programs that we offer to people in our community. Our partnerships with different community organizations are one way that we have of doing that. In the past few weeks and months, I have had the great pleasure of working with some people from Cumberland Congregational Church, United Church of Christ. They have worked tirelessly to coordinate our panelists and speakers for this series. And they have been able to do so because of the great work that they are doing with asylum seekers in the greater Portland area. I'd like to introduce you to our moderator for tonight's learning event. Reverend Allison Smith is Senior Minister of the Cumberland Congregational Church, United Church of Christ. Let's see, she was a co-founder of the Anti-Racism Resource Team of the Maine Conference of the United Church of Christ. She and her church have a long history of welcoming neighbors and putting love in action. Allison, I pass the baton to you.
Thank you, Kelly. It has been our honor to work with the Prince Memorial Library, and it is truly a gift to welcome each and every one of you and to welcome our panelists who have so much wisdom to share. And so I want to just note that tonight we'll be learning about the aspects of the journey that people take from Central Africa to Maine. And there are so many pieces of that journey, and people come in different ways, but we have decided to share this evening a bit more particularly about the journey through South America and to the southern border, and then arriving in Maine. And so tonight you will hear about courage and resilience in the face of danger and challenge. And so we'll begin this evening with Luke Kwanzambi, He is an incredible historian. If you were able to attend our session last time, he grounded our program in the history of the DRC and Angola. Luke is the founder of Xenos Communications Consulting. And so Luke, just briefly, as we think about the journeys people take, can you share about the situations, the threats that people are facing in the DRC and Angola that cause people to leave everything that they know and love to flee? And if you can just share with us for a few moments, that would be really helpful.
Thank you, Reverend, and thank you everyone for attending one more time. I'm very appreciative of the opportunity. And I wanted to start by highlighting that the answer is certainly going to be multi-pronged, because there's no one single reason why people depart from their home country and relocate abroad and become migrants or immigrants. So the primary reason why people are leaving Congo and Angola, it's because these countries are crisis countries. On the one hand, it could be either a conflict country or a post-conflict country. In the case of the Congo, as I highlighted last time during my presentation, from the independence days to date, the country has known little time of respite, very little time of stability. And that has created within the national fabric of the Congo is a sentiment of instability and insecurity. It doesn't just come as a sentiment, it also manifests itself in the form of a very repressive format of the government. It doesn't matter which dispensation of government is in the office, whether it is those who inherited from colonialism, or decades later, people have not known any ounce of colonialism. It's still brutality from the end of the people who are at the helm of the country. But you also have manifestations of brutality in the format of opinion silencing. People are not really free to express their opinions. And when you're bold enough to do it, it comes with a sense of benediction, like a vengeance. And the state uses coercion on you in a form or in another in order to have you either align with the public ideology that's running the country at the time, or simply silence you, either by imprisonment or sometimes by assassination. Now, it's very important to highlight that many of the assassinations recorded in territories like the Congo and Angola have absolutely nothing to do with the head of state, like the president running the country. It could just be minions, people who are in a position of being in the circle of power, who benefit from their aura, from their access to authority and presence, and act on their behalf. They believe they're acting for the best of interest of their leadership. That's one thing. On the other side, there's not just political and I'll say human rights component. There's also economic components that should be taken into perspective. I know it's highly sensitive, and I won't really linger on that because given the fact that your society views it as being a bone of contention, but the truth is, when a country is in a crisis like the Congo, or post-crisis, like after 27 years of crisis in Angola, and still recovering, trying to establish reliable institutions and establish a sense of clear leadership and reliability of the government, even where the government in Angola is still struggling to deliver to the people, and just a handful of people have access to the benefits of the country, from access to wealth to access to opportunity. So what that creates is also an underlying effect of economic crisis, an economic quagmire. So a lot of people don't have access to good financial opportunity. You will remember that when you read reports about countries like the Congo and Angola, a lot of times you'll hear about people living with less than $2 a day. That's dire poverty. It's not even poverty, it is misery. So a lot of times when people leave Angola, leave the Congo, and join the American society, they're not coming for the best of you. They're coming because they're coming from the worst of it. They want to just come sort of be a part of the lowest layers of your society. That's the truth. They're not vying for your bigger opportunity. They're coming to join the poorest of your poor. It is a reality. And I have been there, and many of us are still there in a sense. So it's not like people are plotting to take away the wealth of America. They're joining the poorest of the poor of America. So the other thing is a sense of stability and plan and the future for the families. You will notice a lot of the people are coming here right now are family structures. They're not necessarily coming as individuals. They're coming as fathers, or single fathers with children, or single mothers with children. And sometimes, if they're lucky enough, they have their entire family that has journeyed with them to here, either through the southern border or coming here with a visa. When there's instability and chaos, like in places like Congo and Angola, or even Haiti, or whatever other country that's sending immigrants here right now, everyone who is a responsible parent will be caring about the future of their children, and they'll try to raise them in a place where, first of all, they get to live long enough to become grown up, because, you know, with conflict countries, you'll hear about children being recruited for being part of armed forces. And so that's not a conducive situation for a lot of families. I mean, I'll just cut to the chase and just say that there's a lot of instability in terms of political instability, economic instability, personal instability, and also issues with human rights, access to basic human rights, and also access to political opinion. A political opinion formation is possible within the mind of a lot of people, but to express it publicly, you'll have to be quelled in the egg, unfortunately, because a lot of time when you're speaking truth to power, you get to face the consequences. That's about it for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luke. We are really grateful for your sharing and summary. It's a good transition, actually, as we think about our families and the children and our hopes for the future, for me to introduce Prince Pombo Mafumba. He is an educator in the community in multiple ways. He arrived in Maine in 2019, had been in New York, also originally from the DRC. But he came with his small daughter and his wife. And since that time, he has been helping in the wider community, teaching, translating. And Prince, we are so grateful that you are here to share your story. It will just be a part of the story, but we're so thankful for your voice and your presence. And I'd like to invite you to share what it was like to leave Brazil with your infant daughter and wife. I believe you traveled on foot and on boat and in bus to get to the southern border through so many challenges and countries. And if you can share a bit about that and what you learned about yourself, we would be grateful.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much, you all guys, for, making me part of this meeting. I'm so glad to make myself heard, to all of you. So I'm from Congo, basically, like Luke, and I end up in Brazil for reasons like political reasons. But for me, Brazil, I've never been outside of Congo until I was like 35 years. I used to live in Congo, basically. So when I went in Brazil, that was like my first time to leave Africa to another new continent, like America, South America, but that was a new experience for my life. I'm born like in family of 6, and my all brothers and sisters are in Congo until now. So I was myself a new place, like new country, new society, based on certain circumstances. So I was supposed to do my best and see how I can live in that area. That was a new place. But I was like, okay, I'm here, so I need to really survive. In Brazil, they speak Portuguese that is a little bit different than Brazil, like Angolan Portuguese. They have different accents. So when I was living there, I took my time trying to learn and adapt with Brazilian Portuguese, how it looks like, and then I can see what to do. I had some French and English when I get in Brazil. So when I get there, like after 3, I had one of my friends who used to live there a long, long time, who received me in Brazil. And he received me in his place. And then after 3 months, as I had English and French and some Portuguese, I tried to find a job in Brazil. Because they give me some permanency, provisory, with the work authorization that I could work in Brazil. So I started to work and speaking and learning in the same time Portuguese. So, but that was some place, like I was in Rio de Janeiro. That is one of the unsafe city in the world. Because when I get there, I try to experience different things, like what they call favela. Favela in Brazil, like in Rio, it's a gang organization inside of cities that doesn't depend on federal government or local government. So kind of organization that are many, they live inside of town or city. So they run their people, they have their organizations. So they live based on drugs and such kind of business they do. So most of the time they fight with the police. They fight with the police of military just to control territory. So that was my first time to experience such kind of things in another place. So I was really, really kind of scared and it blew my mind to see like, oh my God, where I am here myself. What's going to happen to me in this place? Maybe because I was experiencing working, I've been working like in a hotel, you know, here there was hospitality field in the receptionist hotels and translating things like this. But seeing what I was seeing in reality, like war between police and gangs or military and with gangs and killing of people around on the street and gangs collecting tax on the street. So that was new experiences of my life. I was like, wow, it's a beautiful place. People are welcoming, but reality is really, really complicated to live there, especially if you are like foreigner. And people really identify you like a foreigner. They said, they call them like gringo. Gringo, that means you're not from there. They will know you based on your accent, based on your way of living. So you will really be identified like a foreigner. So that was another part of challenge that I should pass from, passing the country, like, okay, what am I going to do here? So when they decide to give me like a permanency, when I get my daughter in Brazil, and like a low, poor in Brazil, generally, Brazil is really a divided country between rich and poor. Rich live like next to the coast with a beautiful apartment and whatever. They have access to everything, and poor lives in the like mountains behind. So black man was a poor in Brazil, I should live in favela. So I was experiencing like war all the time and people fighting and guns. So that was really scary. That's what left me, like pushed me to take that decision. I told my wife when I met her, she's from Bahia, northern part of Brazil. And I called her in Brazil, we met her, she get pregnant of my daughter when my daughter was born. So we were experiencing those stuff in the city. And I told them, look, I can't leave such places, really, really dangerous. Let's try to see where we can go. That's what we just decided to move. But the decision was not really coming here in America. That was in Canada. That's where we decided to go. But we didn't really know what will be the reality on the road. Absolutely. So, we cross different countries and geographies, seeing. But based on what people were explaining us, what they heard about the experience, they said, it's not a big deal. You're going to go you're going to get in Panama, you're going to see a river, just follow that river, you're going to go. And then that was kind of a brief explanation of the reality that we should face living Brazil, coming here in America. So when I told my wife, she said, okay, I feel unsafe as well here. So I will follow wherever you're going to go. We can go together. That's what we decided to come. But living there, if you want me to tell you in brief what happened between Brazil and southern border of America, we spent kind of 4 months traveling. So the 4 months of traveling, like something that we didn't really expect to happen, because most of people we met on the trip may spend like 2 years or 3 years, depending on what is going to happen to you. You may stuck in any country and stay there and live there or make kids or whatever. So that we depend how you're going to manage a trip from south to north. So if it's for me, it's like a little time from comparing to majority of people. So that decision came, and then we should plan. They told us in Brazil, if you go in Rio Branco, which is in northeast, western part of Brazil, you're gonna meet other people going north. From there, you can talk with them. They can tell you what to do. To just travel, go over there. So we travel from Rio to Rio Branco. From there, we saw tons of people coming all over around the world. But they immigrate and coming from Argentina, Brazil, India, and everywhere. So we just make a group. Where are you going? And smugglers are in border that they already used to do, like to take people from one point A to B and so on. To tell you from here, you're gonna get a bus and keep going. So our journey started over there. We slept one night outside, and then we had some money because I worked in Brazil. I was trying to save some money, like $2,000. So we should pay and then keep going. So when we get there, the journey started in Peru. So smugglers two cars, and they should explain us, get from this point to this point. Or in detail, it's like, that was scary for us, that to traveling and being scary to be like arrested by immigration service of a different country and sending back in Brazil, because we should lose everything. We lost our house, our furniture and everything, and we decided to move and go to another place. So, but hopefully that was like, you're gonna arrest you, pay your money, and then release you, and keep going. So we went from there, Peru, we went Ecuador. In Ecuador, we went Colombia. Yes, in Colombia, because there are a group of people who used to work in that, like helping new people or immigrants who are crossing different countries, to give you some information for a long time that we already just experienced when we were traveling. So when you get in certain city, they will tell you, where do you want to go? Are you going in America? Yes, there is a bus stop. You pay me the money. I will take you in a taxi. I will take you such places. And then they're going to show you like the bus stop where you can go. So in brief, we left Brazil to Colombia, taking the bus. But the worst part was from Colombia to get like in Panama. That the thing we didn't know. That was a little bit fun, getting bus and seeing cities, sitting in town and seeing different people and learning Spanish in the process. But when we get in Colombia, they told us, okay, from here, there's no way to get like in Panama. You need to go get a boat, but it's dangerous. They may shoot you by military or, yes, military in the sea. So you need to get a boat from here, like 8 hours of boat to another village. And then from that village, you're gonna get another boat next to Colombian border. And then we didn't know what we were expecting when we were traveling. So when we get in Colombia, we should get a boat from one point Turbo to Carpugana, which is a small village, but it's kind of 8 hours of traveling in a small boat. People talk us, we should pay some money with smugglers who used to be there. So we slept next day, we should take those boats. When we start to worry about the decision that we took to travel, started from there. And we get in that boat. When they showed us a boat, they said this boat is gonna get here, so we should travel 8 hours from here to, I'm like, oh my God. But we didn't have any choice to go back or stay there in Colombia because we were on a family in Colombia. We should keep just accepting. So we took the boat that was 8 hours in ocean. That was really, really scary. We get in Carpugana, which is a little village. And then from there, the next day, we should get a boat during the night with that life jacket to get in a little like next to the Panama border. So where we experienced getting those boats, that was multiple boats, like 50 boats with a lot of people inside during the night. And people were dying. We were seeing when we traveled. It took us 4 hours during the night traveling from that point to Panama border. So we were screaming. We don't know how we found ourselves in the shore, but it happened to see we were ourselves, like we lost everything we had, our bags, and then we had our daughter. So we just found ourselves there because that was really, really hard because the ocean was agitated during the night with a lot of wind and people screaming and other boats were turning around. So we couldn't see. We just closed our eye and see what should happen. But hopefully we found ourselves there in the shore. And then we should, from there, take the Darien Gap. So we saw smugglers coming with weapons, so we should pay them. They steal our money, so we didn't have nothing. People collected their money and then they helped us to pay the smuggler to take us in that journey in that forest, in the Darien Gap. So from there, so I don't know how I can explain you guys. So I'm sorry to tell you that because it's something that in normal time you can't do that. Like thinking like this, where we should climb highest mountain that I never seen. And it was raining and people screaming, others staying behind. So we were just keep moving. So we were walking during night and then at day we need to sleep, being scared of military from Panama. So we reached Panama. We walked 7 days with God in the bush, and then they left us in a certain point. They said, you need to go yourself because we're scaring with military from Panama. They can kill us. So where everybody stayed, we should go, myself and my wife and my daughter, who had kind of 6 months. So we took our 3, and then we started going ourselves. They just explained us, follow this forest. You're going to see plastic bags and river, and then move on to get in Panama border. So we walked from there. That was really, really hard 4 days. We didn't have food. We didn't eat nothing. So we should just proceed to get in Panama. So when we get close to Panama, we see what Indian guy in the forest, he saw us. So he helped us to show us a road to lead us until the Panama, like border. So we get in Panama, we saw military, they receive us from there. I want to just be brief. And then from there, we stayed 2 days. They took us in next camp. Next camp, we didn't have nothing, just like money. So we should stay there. People were coming in the next immigrant camp. They collect some money for us so we can pay a bus to go in Costa Rica border. When we get in Costa Rica, we receive some help from government, like healthcare for our daughter because she had like diarrhea, things like this. They try to help us from there. And then people help us with money to go in the border. When we get in the border, we didn't have money. We should go back again in capital city to beg money, to collect some money in the organization. We get the money that was like $800, and then we pay the bus. We start to go. So hopefully, I would like to highlight something here in Nicaragua. Nicaragua with Costa Rica, before us arriving there, people should take a boat and get to the next city, and then you can keep going. Their border, like walking border, was closed. I don't know for what reason, but when you get the border, that was really dangerous because military should attack you because smuggler was doing those business. But once we get there, the new law came in the country that government banished that activity, so people can get in the border, like in the border, pay immigration, and then you can go. So that was something that really helped. That's because a lot of people have been killed taking the boat by the military. So once we arrived, that law was banished, so we just crossed the border. So we took a bus until we get in Mexico. And in Mexico, they jail us 15 days in the jail in southern Mexico. And then they give us like a notice to live 15 days in the country. So we went in the border to seek asylum. And one Mexican received us at home. Next day, he took us in shelter and introduced us. The shelter was kind of their church shelter. We stayed there. That was a family shelter. So if you have a family, you're gonna meet a lawyer and you talk with the lawyers, and you're gonna wait until they're gonna make a negotiation, like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, so they can take you and then bring you to the boat, customer border, things like this in the border. So from there, they're gonna process you and they ask you the reason why you come in the country. So we wait 2 weeks and then we came. So he just called us. We went, she asked permission for us. We went to the port of entry. And then they asked us questions. We stayed there 1 day and then next day they give us a parole. So we tried to come into the country from there to Buffalo. And then Buffalo, I came here in Maine. So that's kind of story in brief, how I end up coming here, yeah.
Oh, Prince, thank you so much. And I know other people will have questions for you, but I want to just ask you, what gave you the strength to keep going?
Yeah, this is a good question, but I will just tell you something, maybe you guys can, it's a funny thing, because in my mind, I was thinking, if a human being does like a week without eating or drinking or whatever, he may die. That's what I knew before. But I realized that we did kind of a week without eating and drinking, but I didn't die. So in certain circumstances that you really need to save yourself, maybe save other people's life, especially I was thinking about my daughter, basically. So, because when we took a boat, I even told Thais, I'm sorry to take you in such kind of trip because, sorry, maybe we can die because it turns bad. So my hope was, let me save maybe my daughter. I can save my daughter so I can do whatever I can do. So she was kind of my motivation about everything I was doing. To save even one person, I tried something that didn't really work because it turned really bad. But when I was looking at her, I was feeling like a strength and the hope to keep moving and doing something. So I had really love to her. And Thais, who is a Brazilian, I just took her from their family. I'm like, I have a responsibility, so I need to do something for them. So they was motivating me and I was feeling that strength. And the other thing, so we didn't have any choice, or you live or you die. So we chose to live, and then we felt an energy that we don't know where it came from. Just to walk like 4 days without eating and drinking, but you climbing highest mountain that I never seen in my life. But we climbed those mountains maybe from 5 to 8 p.m., 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. without eating and drinking. So that was a survival mode that we were. Or you died because we were seeing people dying, staying, or others tired, they can't breathe because that was too high mountain. So I don't know where that energy came, but I still think that was kind of, I would like to save someone, so I should do my best to save even my daughter. That's what I did. Yep.
Thank you so much. I'm sure other people will have questions, but we'll make a transition now. Thank you, Prince, for sharing your story. To welcome Jennifer Bailey. We're honored to have her with us. She's a senior project attorney at ILAP, the Immigrant Legal Advocacy Project. She's worked on the Texas-Mexican border with ProBar and the American Bar Association, and I could go on about her, but I will just pass the time to her to share about what is the situation at the border in broad strokes and what we can learn right now.
Great. Thank you so much, Allison, and especially thank you, Prince and Luke, for sharing your stories. It really helps us to be better at accompanying and advocating for the new arrivals who are here. It helps us be kind of part of a big community. So thank you for teaching me things that I can't and did not experience on my own. I'm going to share my screen. Well, I'm going to press start on my timer and share my screen. To tell you, I was mostly invited here today, not just because I work at ILAP, hopefully here we go, which many of you know about. So ILAP works here in Maine, providing direct legal aid, educational, systemic advocacy. We have offices. Is it sharing? Yep. Okay. A little circle going on my end. We have offices in Portland, Lewiston, and around the state, but we don't have an office on the border. So I think I was invited because I actually began my immigration career at the border of Texas and Mexico, down at the border of Harlingen, in Harlingen. Mine says unresponsive. Can everybody agree that you see my PowerPoint? Yeah, okay.
Allison, sorry, Jennifer, we can see your power. Oh, okay, it's better now. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's like it's got a little.
We're seeing what you're seeing, essentially.
Huh. Well,
yeah.
we'll keep going and we'll see, because I don't think I want this all. Maybe I'll stop and try to share again to show you some pictures. So I did that work down at the border. That's kind of where I cut my teeth and being an immigration advocate. And I worked in a detention center where I was representing people. I think there were like 2,000 or 3,000 people detained in a detention center there, and we were representing them applying for asylum. So I pretty much try to go back every year and volunteer at the border with the same project that I worked for. I haven't been there since 2019. Because of COVID, and I will be going back again this August. So hopefully this works, figures, right? I really wanted to show you some pictures. Well, while this is loading, I have a bunch of graphics from the border and some pictures from my most recent trip there, because I think if you do a search on, U.S.-Mexican border or what's happening at the border, you'll get all sorts of great articles. You'll get articles from the New York Times, from NPR, all sorts of video and written pieces that will give you a lot of information, a lot of real dramatic graphics. But I wanted to try to talk about, sort of the numbers, the why, and what happens when someone like Prince makes that journey to the border. What happens to them? I'm trying one more time here. I logged out of another screen. Okay, I'm going to try it. Apologies, everybody, right? One more time. So I'll talk while I'm doing this. One of the questions that I think that organizers gave me is, is it predictable down at the border, or is it chaotic? And it is not predictable, and yes, it is chaotic. Essentially, almost everybody who comes is treated differently. A lot of this has to do with the resources at any given border crossing at any given time. A border, here we go. I'm going to try one more time. Got to back up. Let's see what we can do. Apologize for the people who are recording this. Can you see this?
Yes, that looks great.
Okay, maybe I just will put it in this mode and not presentation mode, so that we don't make any troubles. So just want to give you kind of a quick visual of how big this border is. This is the U.S.-Mexico border. It's almost 2,000 miles long. You can see down on the right side, if you can see my cursor, there is that's called the Rio Grande Valley. We see Matamoros, Mexico, Harlingen, McAllen. A lot of people seem to be crossing the border down on this far right in South Texas. Then a little bit, you might recognize some of the names: Del Rio, Eagle Pass. A lot of the new arrivals who come here have come through those border crossings. And most recently, we've seen people coming from way over here, San Ysidro and Calexico, California, which is kind of new. I did want to let you know that many people have the idea that people cross the border coming to Maine. This is like a very new phenomenon that is started with the people in the expo. And I will just tell you, from a practicing attorney perspective, we've been seeing people arriving from the border pretty consistently since about 2016, 17, never in those big, large numbers that necessitated the first use of the expo. So I think that's just important. I'm glad that captured the hearts and minds of people in Maine, but it's been happening before that, and it's continuing to happen now, as we move forward, we'll talk a little bit about. So I'll give you a little idea of the numbers. You know, these are big numbers. This shows you some of the border enforcement actions from 2017 to 2023. That's a large increase. You know, that's due to a couple things. That's due to an increase in refugee outflow and people trying to cross the border. The same time when the borders become tighter and more restricted, both under Trump and Biden. You know, if you've heard of this Title 42, what that is, that's the Title 42. It's a policy that was instituted under the Public Health Services Act, but it was used to basically close the border for public health and communicable disease reasons, citing that people crossing the southern border would bring COVID into the United States. So it put this effective end to the border, just a shutdown. It was the invisible border wall that Trump had always wanted. This, by the way, is going to terminate in May of this year. So all those kind of expulsions and returns can be expected. These numbers can be expected to grow coming up soon. You know, I think another reason these numbers look so large is there's a bigger focus on protecting the borders. They've, you know, Texas and other southern states have sent their own troops to help support the Border Patrol and others in repelling migrants from coming to the United States. So the apprehensions are a deliberate effort to keep people out. I'm just going to give a few pictures from a recent trip that I took. So this is in the Rio Grande River. So Rio Grande is the border, the southern border all through Texas. In that first fact sheet, you can see we don't have a land border, we have a river border for pretty much all of Texas. The Rio Bravo is what Mexico calls it. We call it the Rio Grande. The right side is Mexico in this picture. The left side is the United States. And in fact, those buildings are some US courts that were being used during that time while people waited in Mexico, that remained in Mexico process, which no longer exists. And this gives you the lower picture gives you a little idea of, you know, people use the river for washing, for bathing, and for crossing. This is the bridge. This is going into Matamoros, Mexico from the Brownsville side. I put a bridge picture just to give you a flavor, but also there's two different ways people come in. If you're arriving at the southern, you're arriving in Mexico, so you've come like Prince all the way up through all those mountains and the harrowing night journeys, and you make your way through Mexico, and you come across you get to the U.S.-Mexico border. There's bridge. If you talk to a newcomer, you'll say, "Oh, well, did you come across the bridge? Or did you come across the river?" The bridge is considered a port of entry, a formal port of entry. The river is a way you can cross irregularly or an illegal crossing, and that has a lot to do with kind of how you're treated and processed going forward. Just give you some visuals about the Mexican side of the border. Just throngs of people, thousands and thousands of people waiting for a turn to get metered across the bridge, waiting for a chance to sneak over during the night. Minimal services, obviously lots of hunger. It's a dangerous place, sexual assaults. You know, I went with a group one night to give food because there's really people don't have any income or ways to live. So different social groups bring food every night to the migrants. And so it's just like a flavor of this one border town, but it's like this in every border town all across the border of Mexico and Texas. And that's why I invite you to look at some of the other visuals you might see in Tijuana and San Diego that has equally chaotic, situation. I just like that idea, like, even though you're traveling by foot, you can't do anything without a cell phone, right? And so there's all these makeshift chargers all over. And a little welcome to the United States. So I just thought maybe I'd go through what is briefly, this is really legally, and I don't want to bore you all with these kind of details, but what is supposed to happen process-wise when you come to the United States. Now, I want to make a note that it's happening, this talk, August, April 25th, 2023. And there will be some new changes to what's happening at the border very soon in February 2023. President Biden put forth a whole bunch of new asylum rules that are going to make the border a much more inhospitable and unfriendly place. They will go into effect. They're quite awful. And I invite you to look at ilap.maine's website to look at a letter we wrote explaining all the problems with that rule, rather than going in it now. But for now, this is sort of the way someone should be treated. And they're treated on a very uneven basis, and I'll help explain why. So the little guy on the left is an arriving alien, like pretend that's a bridge, that's a port of entry. When you come in as through a port of entry and you say, do you have a visa? Do you have any, permission to be here? And you say no, then you are immediately subject to something called expedited removal, which means it's just they can deport you right away. They can turn you right back, unless you express a fear of return to your country. If you express a fear, you're given this next thing called a credible fear interview. And I wrote below what it is. You basically, it's like a little very, very mini asylum type of questionnaire where you talk about why you fled your country and why you can't return and you are qualified to move on. If you don't pass credible fear, you can have an immigration judge review it. If the immigration judge says no, you're back out the door. It's a very, vulnerable part for a trip, because you're here at the border without much information, and you've got to make this type of claim. So you're not deported immediately. You have phone interpreters. Sometimes it's a phone interview, but you don't have a right to attorney. You don't have a right to any counsel on this, and you have very, very limited rights to any judicial review. I not too many more minutes left, but I wanted to just kind of explain that there's a lot of discretion built into this. So people are treated so many different ways, even if they come across the bridge, or there's a little person coming across the river, we call iwi, entered without an inspection. They should still go through the same process, but they may not, because the reality is that in any of those ports of entry on that border, when someone crosses, what time of day, whether they crossed in a big group or a small group could fundamentally affect how they're treated and the fairness of process they're given. Sometimes a border patrol station is overburdened or understaffed, people called in sick. Sometimes it's 3 a.m. And so they just don't have the capacity to process someone. They're kind of given paperwork and sent on their way. Other times they use their right, which they have in their discretion, to detain you, hold you in detention, and you do this whole credible fear process while you're in detention. Sometimes when somebody is in a sick position, I'm trying to make this before, somebody's sick or someone's pregnant, then they say, oh, we have the right to detain you, but we don't really have the capacity or the interest in detaining people who have special needs. If somebody goes into birth in detention, that's not very convenient for the United States. So those people are kind of sent on their way. But I just wanted to highlight that we don't see it here, but people are detained. And I know that if you talk to the community members here, you will find lots of people who know friends or family who were detained, and in fact, often deported. This is one place, this Port Isabel Detention Center, where I've worked regularly. This is a adult detainee location. I'm just trying to, the pictures just to give you like a visual how they're in the middle of nowhere. And this is where they have their own courts in there, kind of self-contained little world where, like I put 90% of them get deported if you end up in this detention center. And I just looked up the other day, just the statistics, and on any given day, there's about 25,000 people detained in immigration detention centers. I will say that we do find that part of this discretion, the different ways that people are treated, mean that families can be basically ripped apart. So it's not uncommon and that you will have a woman and a child here, and they have the father of the family who never got out of detention and who had to go through the whole process while detained in the detention center court without a lawyer and ended up being deported. So now they're here alone and they have the right to go forward with their process, but their loved one has been deported, and that happens very frequently. Almost out of time here, but the one thing that I wanted to answer is this other question that the organizers asked me is why are people being sent to Maine? Why Maine? And I just wanted to clarify that the Department of Homeland Security, and that's the agency that houses both the Immigrant Customs Enforcement, ICE, as well as the Customs and Border Protection, CBP. Those are kind of the border police. Nobody makes anyone go anywhere. Nobody sends people to Maine. People go to the destination they give to their to the people with whom they have contact. So Border Patrol or any of the other immigration agencies who ask them for an address, and they give them the address, and then they are sent on to that location. So a lot of the people in Maine have community members, friends, family, pastors who they either knew from the time they left their country that they were going to be heading to Maine because of these connections, or learned along the way, like Prince, gave some window into that. You meet a lot of people along the way and you learn, how do I do this? Where do I go? What should I do? So some people give addresses in Maine because of that. Other times people don't have an address. Then locally, they're usually sent to the shelters, maybe right where they're picked up in Texas. These are just volunteer shelters. And we found that the shelter workers who can't hold people forever there will say, hey, why don't you go into Maine, because of the GA and the housing benefits, the shelters, the other things that they can take advantage of here, and they'll kind of encourage them to go on their way to Maine. So I just wanted to make it clear that nobody gets sent against their will to Maine, but at the same, and they're free to go wherever they want. But if somebody is crossing in the California border and they give an address in San Francisco, and then they make their way to Maine, they have the right to do that, but they just need to make sure that they transfer their case to Maine, both with the help of a lawyer, and that they report that they are in Maine, because when you give an address, that's the case that's the court you're assigned to, the court that would govern that address. In Maine, we don't have an immigration court in Maine, so all our people here go to the immigration court in Boston. So I'm going pretty fast. I'm almost done. I think I answered that. I just wanted to give a little bit of information about the Canada aspect. A lot of people have gone to Canada from Maine. Either they were hoping to get there, and that's why they came through the United States, or they've gotten frustrated with the length of the process, or have lost along the way in the United States, and they're hoping to get to Canada. We have a treaty called the Safe Third Country Agreement, which is an agreement with Canada that means if you came to the US first, you have to do your asylum process here in Maine. You can't go to Canada, and vice versa. This used to only apply to people crossing at ports of entry. And if you did that unlawful crossing, like crossing the river on the southern border, you could make an inland refugee claim. They've now updated that agreement, Trudeau and Biden, and now this Safe Third Country Agreement treaty applies to everyone. So only with small exceptions for family and some certain other narrow exceptions could you ever get to Canada. Changes a lot of opportunities for people who are left here in Portland or Maine, who actually were hoping to get to Canada. So I think I'll stop there. These slides, this gives a little information about ILAP. You can find a lot of legal resources on our website, ilatmaine.org. And then, of course, for anybody here who's interested, please sign up for the alerts. We send out regularly newsletters and updates and advocacy, and we do a lot of social media too. So you can find us at those links. And sorry, that was a little longer, but I think it was my technical problems at the beginning. So I will close up for now and maybe answer some questions later.
Jennifer, thank you so much. That was so helpful and so insightful. And folks are starting to write questions. So I encourage you to do that. And then we'll have some time for that at the end. We'll do the best we can with all of the questions. But right now I'd like to introduce Mufala Cheatham. Mufala is the executive director of the Maine Immigrants' Rights Coalition. She is an incredible leader in our state. She was featured in 2018 in the Maine Women's Magazine, just as an example of a woman who inspires. And she's a former vice board member of Prosperity Maine and founder of the Empower Immigrant Women Conference, just to name a few examples of her important work. And so Mufala, just briefly ask you to share as we have experienced 1,000 new arrivals in the last months, what it is like on the ground right now. And then I know you're interested in answering people's questions. So if you can just give us that beginning, then we'll be able to move into the question period.
Thank you. You know, it's when you are the organization that's on the ground and seeing people come, when you get to hear, you know, their journey, it kind of grounds you, you know. And so as I listened to, you know, Luke talk and Prince as well talk, and then, you know, Jennifer really, you know, giving us the visual of, you know, this journey that Prince, you know, and his family took, it takes you to another place. You know, we are the organization plus, you know, that a coalition of organizations who are, you know, doing direct services, you know, supporting people coming. I think you heard from Jennifer that, you know, coming, you know, people coming to Maine, seeking asylum, coming through the border, you know, is not new as in like 2019. You know, it's, you know, but in 2019, it was really amplified because of the sheer number of people that came within a space of a month. And so it looked like all of a sudden people are coming through the border. That has always been, you know, a way that people come in. But why I feel so grounded and even more so wanting to wake up tomorrow morning and still, you know, wanting to support the next person that comes with whatever little, you know, our organizations have, whatever little our, you know, communities have, is where people don't have it at the moment of when they have a choice to go back, they can't go back. You know, and I hear this a lot when people say, you know, so when are you going back? You know, when are they going back? Like, what does a person like Prince go back to? And how do they even go back? You know, so that, you know, I want to start with that because that's grounding. You know, that is grounding. If you leave this place, you know, I mean, this place as in, you know, this webinar, if you leave this place, if you want to leave this place with something, I think one thing that you should live with is, you know, really when people say, you know, we need people to help, like you have an idea of what people have and choices they just didn't have, you know, they did not have, they just didn't have anything, and then they are here. So when we're saying help, you know, it means that hopefully now it gets to really mean a lot to like, I want to help them, you know, because their journeys coming here are so traumatic in a way that, you know, these are not people that just come in. And I saw this in 2019 when we had folks come, you know, at the expo then, and people say, oh, we want to take their kids and we want to teach their kids, you know, we want to take to them like every fancy thing that you want. And then when they came into the expo, and that just didn't happen, people were just wondering, why can't they do this? You know, we're trying to teach them this, they don't want. We're trying to teach them English, they don't want. We're trying to give them this, they don't want. How do you expect a people who have spent 4, 5, 6 months, you know, traveling and seeing pain and death and still being able to say, for the sake of my child, I'm going to get up and still make this boat and still make, you know, get on this bus and still dodge this bullet? How do you expect those people to be, you know, successful, like within a week, within a month? It's, you know, so this is, you know, hopefully, you know, again, I'm glad that it's being recorded, that you can hear this back. You can hear Prince talk about his story. Then you'll be able to get up and say, now I want to help. And when you hear our organization saying, yeah, your help is now a burden, please do it this way, because people don't feel like you are shoving help in because you want them to get it right tomorrow. This is a journey, and it's gonna take all of our organization, the state, the municipalities coming together to really figure out what help looks like. Right now, you hear what's on the ground. People continuously are coming. There are shelters around, that are capacity. The city of Portland has over 1,000 plus, asylum seekers in different hotels, plus you add the expo, that's 1,000. There's people who are already in hotels, almost 300 that are going to be losing, emergency support come June 30th. That's about 300 plus of them. Those are people that need help. We have community shelters that have been created. You're talking about between what Merck has and what Greater Portland Family Promise, other community churches that have stepped up to get people into their churches so that they can sleep. You're talking about another 500 individuals, including folks who are couch surfing. So this, when you hear this, and somebody keeps asking me, when is this gonna end? At what point does it even end? As you saw what Jennifer showed you, people are continuously coming back. Migration is not new. It is absolutely not new. And, again, it's not just the United States now. You're seeing it in Europe. You're seeing it, in different parts of the world. People are just trying to find a better life for their families. This economic instability is everywhere. And so we as a country, we as a state, just need to figure out, now that this has found us on our watch, what do we get to do? And so what you see on the screen is, it's very small, I can't even read it now. What you see on the screen here is, how can you help? We're looking at right now people who are needing housing. Housing is number one. If people could find a house, we will not have, all these many shelters that are around. We'll not have people in the expo, in Salvation Army, but housing is a need. How we're responding to that, the state has, through the legislature, they have a number of bills, which you will get the slide as part of you attending. So, if you can't see it, that's fine. You get that in your email. There are a number of bills that we are supporting that are responding to general assistance. There's a number of good bills that we want you on May 5th at 10 o'clock. We'll share information on how you can log in and testify around, supporting these 4 good bills. There's also another 4 bad bills that we want you to oppose, because they're going to make it very hard for people to integrate. They're going to make it very hard. Folks right now don't have, the only financial support they get is through general assistance, but it's very limited, and it hasn't been, I've been asking for a reform of general assistance as we've received a lot of people coming in. So we want you to respond, legislatively through bills that are going to help change some policies, create funding. We want you to support organizations that are on the ground, either helping, people, to get into homes, or helping to educate people, or helping people to, get, first security deposit. We want you to support organizations that are helping with legal. So I've listed a couple of organizations who are really immediate to supporting people, in this current crisis where folks don't have a house, or they're trying to get into a house, or they're trying to get medical support. They're trying to get, just the basic for them to just, for them to, first of all, just arrive and rest before we start planning about very big things, which they would be able to do. And there's a bill at federal level that is, proposing, Senator King, I think, spoke about it today, to shorten the number of days that somebody, can get a work permit. people come to the United States to work, make a better life. No one comes to the United States to eat the food that I get to cook in the shelter, in the kitchen we are renting. They just want to tell us where to work, give us the ability to be able to work. So we want you to support that bill, but we also, with the immediate support, I know the city has a website where they're asking for donations. There's some churches who are keeping people. There are immediate little things that we would say, laundry coins, so that people can go to a laundromat and wash their clothes. We want you to support with bus passes so that they can get into different towns and be able to look at housing, go around, go to a hospital, get about, some Metro bus passes, Breeze bus passes, but also some bus tickets to Boston for their hearing. That's expensive too. So those are like basic things, diapers, baby wipes, baby formula, consumables that are very expensive, for people to afford, but also people who are in shelters can be able to support themselves whilst they are in there. So again, we want you to advocate for, policies to change. We want you to support bills, but we also want you to get out in, people please don't bring your, a couch, if you do bring a couch, I have put an organization here, Furniture Friends, that's receiving those, furniture so that they can get them ready and help them volunteer there. We need people to volunteer for transportation, to get people into homes, transportation to get people, to hospital. So there are basic things that you can do tomorrow. There are things that you can do in the for long term. So we really want you to support in a very meaningful way. Now that you have an understanding that people don't have anywhere to go back, but we will continuously see people arriving, and as long as, the policies at federal level still allow them to do that, you'll continuously see people come. And I get this question, and Jennifer talked about, nobody sends anyone to Maine. They're coming because they know somebody, or they've heard that Mufalo and her family live there. I came here because there was one Zambian. And when I came, I brought other Zambians coming. So every community wants to create that sense of homeliness around them. And so they just talk about, we're here. And others were like, wow, we're here. There's 10 people from my country. And they come. And you heard Prince, people are coming here, they hear, it's word of mouth. But it's also the fact that they can see and say, wow, Maine has been welcoming. I could not emphasize this enough. Maine is a welcoming state. The people are welcoming. And so that also will get people to continuously come. So hopefully, this has been informative, but you can find some meaning when you hear somebody has come and people are continuously coming, but you can find some meaning in how to help.
Mufalo, thank you so much. It certainly has been my experience about how richer my life is, and our church's life is, and our community's life is, as we're learning and growing and helping one another. So I want to open us up now to questions. Let's see, we have several questions for Jennifer related to the border. One is the United States the most desirable destination? And is that based on misconceptions?
I mean, I don't know if that's really a question for me. People go a lot of different places. In fact, the whole refugee resettlement there's a refugee resettlement program, which is a burden sharing agreement with the nations of the world who are signatories to the Refugee Convention. So refugees who are designated as such go to many different places. And, you know, there's many reasons for going. So I don't know if it's the best place. You know, there's everyday migrants trying to get to Greece, to get to Europe. And the laws are just differently protective in different places. But this definition of what is a refugee and the kind of protection that the signatory countries are really required to give people should be the same in every country. Yet you can see how political will and, you know, hatred of the other and xenophobic language and policies make that not true. So Mufala wants to answer that.
Yeah. Here's a question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mufala.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the misconception where that was going. I say this to people, especially, you know, Americans who are not as informed with the world. The United States is the #1 superpower. You know, that is huge, you know, and I say this that you don't know the responsibility that you have as a country around the world, you know, but with that responsibility, with that, it comes with responsibility, you know. So the fact that, you know, you are the #1 superpower doesn't make you the best, you know, just makes you that you have a bigger responsibility that folks would come out. But, you know, there are people going to other parts of the world. And most people, again, is based on where you are in terms of where, you know, like, if I'm from Zambia, if I wanted to bring my family, I don't think I would walk all the way from Africa. If you know, like literally, I'm at the corner of Africa, I'm at the bottom part of Africa. I can take my family walking all the way, you know, I will get to the closest away from my family. So I may go to South Africa, I may go to Brazil. You know, it's like, it's where you can get your family, not just where the best is, it's where you can get your family. And so you see people who are in the north, they're going to London, they're going to all those countries. So that's how migration looks. But I also just want to make sure folks understand that, Americans, it's not just Americans, like people at their core want to help, and especially when you are blessed with more, you always want to help. And so and that help happens. There are African countries that are, that are blessed, that help others. There are Asian countries that do that. So that's just a human nature of just wanting to help. And so when folks come here, they know that there are people who can help. They have an extra, shirt that they can share. They have an extra piece of bread that they can share. So I'm not the best, but one of the many places you can go to.
Thank you very much. Here's a question. Most of the discussion of housing immigrants centers around Portland geographically. What is the prospect of housing new Mainers in a more dispersed manner? Is it a GA issue? Is it access to Boston for hearings? Why aren't we hearing about smaller efforts all across Maine?
Somebody else want to chime in before? I don't want to take up so much space. Well, I will start by saying that, and I was telling somebody the other day that, when I was coming to Maine, to Maine, the person I was coming or hosting me lived in Portland. And so that's where I was coming. And so most people find people that they know around Portland, because that's who's going to help them. I tell this story and people don't understand. Like I said this today, Claude, most of you know, he's a Prosperity Maine, executive director. Him and his family are the ones that helped us. He got a job for my husband. So we couldn't go to Bengal. We stayed near where somebody is. And so that's why people have come here. But when we stayed here, people started moving and we saw, oh, there's a family that's moved to Lewiston. Then people started going. So we are also, in 2019, folks, then there were people that were living in Brunswick, but there were no bigger numbers. We had to work with the city, to create, that place where it has general assistance is important. And that's why we want you to testify, because it is important. Transportation, all these things, Maine is a state that, still has to develop public transportation. So that's also important. So people stay around where the services are. But we are now, with all these bills that we have, a lot of these bills are now allowing us to be able to move people in other towns. So, and I say this, if you want to help, tell me, call me and tell me, come and look at my town. We're looking at towns, and the next 3 months, we're going to spend time on the road looking at other towns so that we can work with the towns, because it's not just us, it's the town itself has to have people to help, but it's also the general assistance, because that's how people get supported. Everything else, I think we can figure out, but it's around where people are that can help them. But we're also right now have so many bills that are helping us to be able to go to another town and folks to get there and be able to be supported in a way that they can stay without coming back to, to the Greater Portland area.
Thank you. Here's a question, Prince, Luke, if you would like to answer. Advice for teachers of newcomers. What would you say to a teacher who is teaching a new child who's arrived in their classroom?
Well, I'll go first, Prince. I believe that it's a multifaceted question, because is it about the linguistic challenge dealing with a child who's coming from another culture, or another country, or is it a cultural challenge, or is it a systemic challenge? Because these are all new elements for people arriving here. A lot of them come with little or to no access to English. And but there's also a lot of good exceptions. I remember, I think my fellow will recall, there was a kid who got here a few months ago. It was in one of the local churches here in South Portland, and that kid, I believe, was 11, and he was one of the best translators possible. He spoke so many languages. He was just a gifted kid. And I personally asked him, having a translator background myself, how did you manage to learn so many languages? He had more languages than I do. And he said that he spent a good deal of time when they nurtured the dream of moving away from the country and coming to America. He started learning every piece of language along the path. Learning about Spanish and learning Portuguese and learning English. He could translate any of those, even Lingala, and that was super impressive. So I think it is very important for people in the education system to think systemically. There is a need to integrate within the system an immigrant component, because not just because of the rising number of immigrants who are coming here, but also because of the new generations of Americans who are born from immigrant families. So in terms of language, the languages that are spoken by immigrants over the period of time are becoming Maine's languages, in a sense. It won't be surprising to find out in the years to come some, let's say, Caucasian kid born in Maine speaking Kinyarwanda. Why? Because of classmates who actually speak Kinyarwanda. And we can't wait for those days to happen. So the need is to integrate in the system programs that can be conducive for immigrants. The need is to learn the cultures and the way of life of immigrants. That's a very big component. And also learn about the history of the immigrants. one of the other pieces to integrate is to learn about the imagination of the immigrants, because they're not coming here empty from any type of imagination. They have a way of thinking about the way they want to live their life. And that's really something to take into account. And the final piece will be to integrate their life experience. I was talking with a friend of mine about one of our neighbors who's from Angola, and whose kid is super smart, but super quiet. And we're asking ourselves, what's the deal with this child? There's a lot of traumatic experiences the child must have been exposed to, but that he cannot process verbally. And to afford them a chance to find a safe venue for channeling all these emotions and starting to process and talk about it, and even go cathartic and share emotionally by crying if necessary. Those are all things that need to be integrated. That's why I just wanted to say that it's a multifaceted question, and there's a lot of ways to embrace it and to really deal with it.
Thank you, Luke, so much. I think we probably need to close. But Prince, would you like to add anything in terms of ways people can offer welcome, or do you want to add any other comments?
Well, I think we don't have too much to add, because what people are experiencing today is what we experienced myself before. The changes, in my opinion, is when COVID hit. A lot of things changed in our country here. So things are turning a little bit hard, like in terms of connections, like people. But we just ask people to keep trying to do what they can do to help, because it's really, really hard when you hit here, you don't have family, you don't know where to go. So people can do whatever they can do, I think, to help. That would be really welcome. That would be awesome.
Yes, Luke, did you want to add something? Oh, you're muted.
I really wanted to emphasize what's known in the field of cultural anthropology as cultural things. As people from different horizons come together and get to interact, there's going to be a lot of lost in communication, and also mischaracterizations and sometimes misperception. So those are things to be aware of. That's why this community needs more and more cultural navigators, people who can not just look at responding to situations, but also think systemically and bring to the table elements of, like, let's say, smarter solutions to what's happening in the interactions. I think I really want to refer to Mufalo because it's someone I highly regard. She will recall that when we were bringing the asylum seekers' families into American homes, some of the most enthusiastic proponents of the asylum seekers we met in the first place were deterred over a number of weeks because there was a lot of confusion birthing from their interactions. It could be, for example, an asylum seeker just calling one of the hosts mama, and it could be a big deal for an African. I don't even call Mufalo in normal circumstances. I call her mama. She's just my older sister, but I call her mama because it's a cultural component. It's a sign of respect. And I refer to people like Claude, like Papa Claude, when I talk to him personally, signs of respect. So when misconstrued because of the frame of reference, there's a lot of confusion that happens. I believe there's going to be a lot of opportunities to make mistakes for all of us as we're coming together and interacting. It is really necessary that we develop a community conversation around all of these, how we can reconsider the existing community and think about smarter ways to integrate the newcomers, including myself, into this community. Thank you.
Yes, Mufalo?
Okay, so I wanted to add that right now, and I hear this a lot, that throwing money at this issue is not the solution. It's not just the only solution. So it's not about like, you could give us $1 million today. But if that $1 million doesn't come with systematic changes and resources around like capital resources, then we'll not be able to solve, whether it's the homeless situation, whether it's the need for, issues happening in schools as the kids, schools now are saying, we have enough, we can't even take more kids, but it's the same buildings. It's basically, we're trying to solve this situation using the same number of schools, the same number of housing, the same number of, so we need to think about money plus systems. So there has to be systematic changes, or the money has to come with a system, and that system should be adaptable in a way. I should be flexible enough to be able to change. And so throwing money is not going to solve the situation without the systems coming with that. And that's how we will see, success.
Yes, that is so true. And I think, the legislative pieces and asking those questions and forums like this where we're continuing to learn are so important. And so I just want to warmly invite everyone to our final gathering, which will be at the Congregational Church in Cumberland, United Church of Christ. And Kelly can offer some more information about that. But I think that will be a very rich gathering of continuing to learn about the social, economic, legal, cultural components as we learn from each other and build a strong, a beautiful Maine together. And so let me pass this over to Kelly.
Thank you, everyone, to each of our panelists, the time that you took with us this evening and the time it took for you, of course, to prepare for this is so much appreciated by all of us. I thank you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. I am going to send everyone a link to the recording of tonight's program so that you can share it widely if you'd like, or you can revisit some of the pieces of it. And that'll happen probably in the next couple of days. Our series continues, as Reverend Allison mentioned, with part 3 in our series, which will be held in person at the Cumberland Congregational Church, which is just down the road from the library. We are recording that, so because we do realize that not everybody will be able to make it in person, but it is happening on Sunday, May 7th at 3 p.m. If you do plan on attending in person, we ask that you please register. You can find the registration information on the Prince Memorial Library website at princememorial.org. I do want to make just one note to our panelists. I did forget to tell you that once I hit end webinar, that we're all going to disappear. So I just want to say thank you to you all again before you all disappear. My name is Kelly Greenlee. I'm the Community Outreach Librarian at Prince Memorial Library. Thank you for joining us this evening. Good night.